Welcome to the Tyrant Network podcast. I'm your host, Corey Frederick, and I'm off the mat today with Rob DeMasi. Rob, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Corey.
So I'd just like to jump right in. I don't know if you've ever seen one of our podcasts before or not, but I'd like to give a little bit of a background on our guests and then kind of turn it over to you and help us understand how you achieved, your success or kind of got to where you're at. So quick little bio on Rob DeMasi, and I guess I'll disclose it now that Rob did wrestle for me as a middle school and high school athlete. So we go way back, and then we've obviously established a relationship over the years. But congratulations to you. I'm just going to kind of start at the top. I know you're going to be starting your new job soon. Rob has just been recently accepted a position at Holy Cross Prep in New Jersey as the president of the school. So congratulations, first of all. Previously, and you can still see the Spartan in the background, you were the VP of Enrollment Management at St. Mark's High School, that's where you graduated high school. Prior to that, and that's why I just want to kind of give a little bit of this because I want to talk about your journey. Prior to going to St. Mark's, you were basically in a support staff position at a local middle school, didn't have your degree yet, and then you decided to go back to school. And not only did you get your bachelor's, but you got your master's as well. And right now you're working on your doctorate degree. And then we'll talk a little bit about one of the foundations that you've started. You're the founder and president of Muscle Movement Foundation. So that's a lot in a little bit right there, but I know you were a three-sport athlete. Why don't you just kind of give us a little bit of your background up until the point where you are now, but, whether it's athletics, I know you had some other adversity in your life, some illness, things like that, but tell us a little bit about your journey, Rob.
Yeah. First of all, I appreciate you having me, Corey. Corey and I, we go way back, and born and raised Delaware my entire life. Catholic school, K through 8, right in Pike Creek, Delaware, not too far from the good old alma mater, which you see behind me here at St. Mark's, and then went to St. Mark's High School, and obviously started out at a young age with competition and doing well in school. Always was prioritizing academics, and was pretty active in sports. So at an early age, I think as early as first grade, started in the sport of wrestling, which was monumental, not only in my childhood, but also in early adulthood development, and got into some football as well in first grade. And then interestingly, picked up the sport of baseball a little bit later on, and then in high school actually ran track a few years as well. But sports has always been a big part of my life, specifically wrestling, and it has really, I would say, laid a foundation for being able to overcome some of the adversities that I've been through, which we'll probably get into a little bit later, and then also developing you into just a champion of life in general. And I take great pride in my upbringing, with my coaches, the support system that surrounds you in the sport of wrestling and the like, and the networking, getting you to the next level. And I think if it wasn't for some of my early coaches, early mentors, my community here in the first state, in the state of Delaware, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. So it's been a great upbringing as a local Delawarean. But yeah, definitely looking forward to spreading my wings a bit. And I guess I'll be living in the state of New Jersey here shortly.
Yeah, I mean, you've been in Delaware your whole life. So I know that you played baseball through eighth grade. You said you ran track and field a little bit in high school, but I feel like football and wrestling were your primary sports. Now you ended up not wrestling. You either didn't finish or you didn't wrestle after your junior year, but you ended up playing football in college. So was football your favorite sport, or was that the one that you thought you'd have the most success in at a higher level, or why did you continue to play football but not wrestle?
Right. So growing up, and I look back in hindsight, I probably would have changed my decision there, but football was my favorite sport. The sport I was probably best at was the sport of wrestling, but I was raised by my stepfather, Terry Huritzak. He's also a St. Mark's grad as well, but he went pretty far in the sport of football, and he was one of my first coaches at 6 years of age. So he went on to be a Division I recruit, played middle linebacker for the University of Minnesota for actually Lou Holtz, and had a great collegiate career. So football was ingrained in me, whether I had a choice or not, at a very young age. And then I was introduced to the sport of wrestling, which was just as competitive, high contact sport, which I loved. And then getting together with you, right? With Tyrant Wrestling, we were able to travel the country, competing at a high level. And I fell in love with that sport as well. But to answer your question, football was my main sport as far as passion goes, and then wrestling. But as far as being competitive, I was probably a better wrestler than I was football player. I decided on football with college. Interesting story. And obviously, you were there every step of the way, and a lot of my coaches and a lot of my family and friends. But throughout my whole high school career, always had aspirations of being a collegiate athlete. And I think really the goal for me and my family, specifically my mother, was to utilize your God-given talent in athletics to, fortunately have school paid for you, using that as a bridge to having school paid for it when you go to college, right? So academics was always important, and sports came second, but the goal was to get your academics paid for in college. Throughout my high school career, I had some great success with the sport of wrestling at an early age. A lot was to do with Tyrant Wrestling Club when we had the club up and running and being exposed on that national level, and went into a stud lineup here at St. Mark's, nationally ranked. I think we were top 10 in the country each year that we were wrestling here at St. Mark's. And Corey, you were assistant coach during that time, helping out, and was really a great, I think, partner program for St. Mark's wrestling program with Coach Jay Baschinelli, and having the Tyrant Wrestling Club with some stud wrestlers come up. But having that early exposure on that national level really, I think, helped gauge some interest from college coaches at a young age. And the same goes for football too. Great coaches that played the collegiate level here at St. Mark's High School. And like I mentioned, my stepdad, so having some connections there. But I was looking at being, a collegiate athlete. Division I for wrestling, maybe D3, D2, D1 AA for football. But I was battling a fight that was a lot didn't understand, and I didn't understand it as well. So interestingly, I started to develop double and blurry vision as a freshman. General fatigue throughout the day, trouble walking up the stairs, let alone getting through a football practice or a wrestling practice. And at that time, at 14 years old, I went and what do? You feel bad, you feel crappy, right? And you go to the doctor to try to figure out what was going on. Unfortunately, during that time, I was diagnosed, and it became a misdiagnosis of anxiety and migraines. So I think as soon as I had a diagnosis on file, no matter how severe these symptoms became, which they did alter in severity level from year to year, month to month, from the time of a freshman in high school all the way time until my start of my senior year, where I was hospitalized for 20 days. Doctors wrote it off, right? They just said, there's a diagnosis of anxiety and migraines. It's psychosomatic. Rob's making up the symptoms in his head. And unfortunately, that did. It actually a official diagnosis of what's called myasthenia gravis. I didn't know what it was or how to pronounce it at that given time. Was officially diagnosed the fall of my senior year, after completely debilitating during my senior year football season. So it was a very unfortunate, bad break in my athletic career. But it was almost a relief, interestingly, in knowing what the heck was going on, right? With this double and blurry vision, trouble swallowing, et cetera.
So when you were getting, let's say at the time, you might not have known you were misdiagnosed, but when you were getting misdiagnosed, did you just accept or believe what the doctors were telling you? Or were you thinking to yourself, like, I don't have anxiety, or I don't have this, or that just doesn't feel right? Or did you just believe what they were telling you? Or did you think that there was something else?
I never did believe it fully. It was a very interesting psychological battle because you're being told that you're not ill, yet you're having physical symptoms such as just trouble breathing. I try to really get the normal Joe, right, to understand what a myasthenic is living with, specifically when they're in a crisis state, right? So this is an autoimmune disease. It can flare up, and then you can have really good times where you're not on any medications at all. But during those times where you were having difficulty breathing, I categorize it as relating to maybe breathing out of a straw, but holding your nose. So you're literally breathing, pushing out every breath, and then you have to consciously think in your head to breathe in every breath. And this is all day, every day, let alone from trying to get a shower, brush your teeth, work a full-time job. So the physical symptoms were really hard to look past because of how severe they become from month to month. Other times, though, when we were doing pretty well, when it wasn't as severe, when it was maybe general fatigue or some blurry vision here or there, yeah, you would chalk it up as you're just stressing out, Rob, and you would almost conform to what the doctors were saying, but never truly believed. I knew something was wrong, and I'm just grateful we were able to put our thumb on it finally.
I mean, I know I would never know what this disease is if it wasn't for you, right? So
Right.
are these doctors, is it just something that's a disease that's just so unheard of, and the symptoms that they didn't even think to consider that it could be this? Or like, how do they not know that, these are the symptoms of that disease?
Right. So it is rare, right? If you talk to anybody that has a chronic illness, right, that lives with an illness for their entire life, they're considered rare diseases, but they're very common to many families across the globe. As far as my symptoms go, I look back through my advocacy and knowing a little bit more about the illness, and all of the main signs were there: trouble breathing, droopy eyelids, double and blurry vision, difficulty swallowing food, all classic myasthenia gravis symptoms. And the interesting part about that was I had a doctor my freshman year. There was an incident where I was rushed from St. Mark's High School to the local hospital here in Delaware with severe trouble with breathing. And I had a doctor in the emergency room actually verbalize to my mother and I that he may have thought that it was myasthenia gravis, and it was never communicated when I was admitted upstairs. So I think there's a lack of knowledge in the physician world, because it is a rare disease. The stats have probably changed, but when I was first diagnosed, I did a little bit of research on how many people have this. And I remember I came up through a graphic online, and it said, if 10 out of every 100,000 people stood up in a football stadium, would you see them stand up? And the answer is probably no, right? So it is rare. But the fact that I learned is that in our healthcare systems, there's a bunch of flaws. They do a lot of great stuff, but there's a lot of flaws, and it's hard to be perfect in healthcare. It is trial and error a lot with medications. But I do think when a doctor is going through training and nurses go through training, they may only experience treating a myasthenia gravis patient in the hospital setting maybe once in their lifetime, if any at all, right? So I do think it was a combination of it being a rare illness, but also there's a significant lack of knowledge and education around the disease itself, how to live with it, how to cope with it, and then most importantly, how to manage the symptoms so you have some type of quality of life.
So I know you were in and out of school and you were in and out of sports. So now fast forward, you get a correct diagnosis. They start treating you. Are you then back to sports, or does life resume as normal, or how did that correct diagnosis help you?
Yeah, so I know, and you get it, all wrestlers can relate to this mentality. We're pushed to past our comfort zones, and you're always taught this mentality: keep pushing through, keep pushing through, keep pushing through. So I've always developed that mentality just in life in general. So after I received a definitive diagnosis, I'll never forget it. I was actually diagnosed by my family practitioner, who visited me in the hospital as a guest on a weekend during her time off.
Hmm.
And she pled with the neurologist to run 3 final tests. I think one was myasthenia gravis, MG, one was Guillain-Barré, and then one was another autoimmune disease. And I was discharged from the hospital without a diagnosis. I followed up with my family practitioner that following Monday, and she told me what it was. And I quote her, she said, "Rob, you're living with myasthenia gravis. This is what it was the entire time. You'll never play sports again, and more than likely you'll live a very difficult life. It's a chronic illness." And I couldn't accept that, with wrestling and the type of mentality that we have developed as scholar athletes and as champions on and off the mat. It was something that I didn't take lightly. And my words back to her was, "You're wrong, and that won't happen." It was definitely debilitating. I worked with her to find a right neurologist actually out of the state of Delaware. It was in the state of Pennsylvania, right in Philadelphia. So a short drive, about 45 minutes from me. And that doctor was monumental in my prognosis with myasthenia gravis. She set me up with a neurologist at Johns Hopkins University who performed a thymectomy. So when I talk about this to the general public, some folks have heard about their thalamus gland, but this is actually your thymus gland, which is just above your heart and your chest. And your thymus gland plays an important role in your immunity as you're growing up. But when you get older, it turns to cartilage, it kind of withers away, and there's not really much use for it. Interestingly, when folks have myasthenia gravis, sometimes they'll find a tumor on your thymus gland, which is called a thymoma. When they remove that gland out of your chest, some people reach remission where they're symptom free, and then other folks see no benefit at all, and then some folks see a little bit of benefit or a better, prognosis over the course of 10 years. Fortunately for me, I heard, hey, you can remove this gland out of my chest. I don't need to live with it. Take it out. Let's rock and roll. So we were down at Johns Hopkins. I elected to have the surgery. They took the thymus gland out. Interestingly, they went through my side arthroscopically. They collapsed my right lung during the surgery. And I was, thank God, I do owe this a lot to, I think, being an athlete my entire life. I was able to breathe through one lung the entire surgery. And typically when someone has myasthenia gravis and they go into surgery, it flares their condition up. So they experience more weakness and fatigue and paralysis. So it is common that they'll spend a good amount of time in the hospital recovering. I think I only spent 1 day in the ICU and 2 days up top. And I was running track a month after I was discharged from the hospital for St. Mark's High School. So fortunately, that surgery was monumental for me. 1 year later, after I decided to stay home and attend University of Delaware, just to live home, recoup, train, I decided to put my highlight tape out and try to fulfill my dream of being a collegiate athlete, and that was being recruited for football.
Now, I know you hit one college, but you ended up at Delaware Valley for those people that aren't local in Pennsylvania. But you didn't complete your college career there. How many years did you play?
So I went to University of Delaware for 1 year, put my highlight tape out. I actually attended college in Ohio for a short amount of time. Didn't really like the culture there, and I switched it up and I landed at Del Valle. I was only there for 1 semester. I love Delaware Valley football program, the coaches, my buddies up there. It was a great feel up there, but unfortunately, after just 1 semester up there, where I was actually a biology major, I was studying, wanted to become a nurse, but they didn't offer nursing. Went into bio. Figured I'd make some of it. I experienced a bad relapse, and it was the first exacerbation relapse with my myasthenia gravis, or MG, post surgery, so post thymectomy. And what I learned in the advocacy, a lot of people, it's common. They might see a little bit of a setback or a relapse per se, anywhere from a year to 3 years after they have that thymectomy. And that's certainly what happened to me. Forced me to return home and actually live at home and start going back to Delaware, Del Tech, really, when I gained back my strength. At that time, I didn't have any aspirations in going back to college. I was, it was a tough time in my life, a lot of adversity. My dreams were crushed. There was a little bit, I think when folks, either whether it's an injury due to sports or whether it is life just happens and throws you a curveball, there's a psychological component to that. That's been your identity, right? Your entire life. You're used to going to school, going to practice, traveling on weekends at tournaments. So when I had made up my mind that this disease was not going to define me, and I went and fulfilled my dream of being a collegiate athlete, being hit so hard with this relapse was a shock for me. Luckily, was able to link back up with Coach Jay Bastianelli, who was my head wrestling coach at St. Mark's High School. He was the assistant principal at the time at a local middle school here in Hokeston, Delaware, called HB DuPont Middle School. It's in the Red Clay Consolidated School District. And he offered me a wrestling coach job. And I took it as a part-time gig and enjoyed, getting back in the sport of wrestling. At that time, Corey brought me in and he was doing the Tyrant wrestling program. Started really enjoying coaching with Tyrant wrestling. And then hooked me up with, a side gig as far as getting involved with helping out with taking attendance and things like that. So I slowly started to get back into what I refer to as normal daily activities, which was huge for me in looking at it as daily wins, right? Trying to recover from this relapse and experiencing daily wins, though it might have been sleeping till 12 o'clock p.m., getting up, taking a shower, being completely fatigued, and then having to lay down for 3 hours just so I can go and take attendance at wrestling practice. That may have transitioned into, as my health got better within 3 to 6 months, actually being able to get out on the mat with some wrestling shoes on. And it did ideally turn into a full-time position at HB Middle School, and then working with Tyrant, with the Tyrant Wrestling Club on the side.
I mean, we talk about all the physical side effects of this disease, but to constantly go through things like you said, I couldn't finish playing college football. I couldn't finish high school wrestling. I had another relapse. I mean, mentally, how were you able to get through all this? I mean, like, especially with mental health nowadays, it's such a popular topic, with people. But like back then, I don't think we talked about mental health a whole lot. And back then, matter of fact, when everybody didn't understand what you were going through, they probably just said, "Suck it up, Rob. Come on, let's go." Like, stop being whatever. But mentally, how were you able to get through all this? Like, I don't know if the doctor misdiagnosed you, but shit, you might have had depression or anxiety or something because of everything you were going through.
Right, without a doubt. I mean, if you look at adolescence, I mean, there's folks that are, kids that are going through different hormone changes. You're going through puberty, of course, let alone just the daily stressors of trying to perform well in school and your social life and all that good stuff that comes with being a teenage kid. And you add all of this other baggage on top of it, right, with being misdiagnosed. So definitely affected me mentally. I really owe it to what I call, and I refer to as a support team. My support team was my family, my mother, my sisters, my stepfather, my coaches, you included, right? My high school, my friends, my family. And a lot of that had to do with my faith as well. I grew up in St. John the Beloved, going to church, and I was raised Catholic, and going back to my roots of really being able to dive in when you don't have anything to rely on or to trust in. It completely referred me back to the one core item that I've always had in my life. And maybe when I was a younger guy, I really wasn't too vocal about it, but it has been monumental throughout my illness and my recovery. And then most importantly, even returning and accepting a position here back in my alma mater, which is a diocesan here in Delaware. Faith was number one. Number two was the support team, blessed with incredible family, friends, coaches, mentors that adjusted and adapted to what my needs were, despite not knowing, what the hell was going on, right? So that was huge for me. It was definitely the faith and the support system and the community behind me, cheering me along every step of the way.
So when you were working well, I know you mentioned you were a middle school coach, but you didn't say anything about working there. So you were a coach first, and then they gave you a full-time position, I guess, but you had no degree. You could have stayed there for the next 30 years. What motivated you to decide to go back to school and not only get one degree, but then go on to get your master's, and like I said, now working on your PhD? So like and not the people that told you what to, but like, why did you decide to do that as opposed to take the easy route, just go in and collect the paycheck and do what's comfortable?
Right. So I think, again, it goes back to your upbringing, being a scholar athlete that has been able to, you've been learned and conditioned to push yourself so much, and you're always looking for that next level. And if you can't get to that next level, you're looking for the next best thing. And I think that's the resiliency factor that the sport of wrestling established, as well as having a great support system, coaches, mentors, family, friends, etc. So I think that when I had the job at HB DuPont Middle School, the middle school, it was a great stepping stone for me, right? So I started out not only physically, but mentally as well. It was great to get involved with the wrestling team. First, I started out coaching wrestling. Then the principal at that time offered me a full-time job as a liaison to a governor's initiative program for Mandarin, Spanish, and Algebra 2. These programs were taught online, so I was more or less, would be in the classroom ensuring that the full-time fluent teacher that would come in about one time or two times a week, everything was going smoothly in terms of when that teacher would leave and be off-site. So it was actually a learning process for me as well, learning the basics of Mandarin and Spanish, and being able to be, a mentor and a coach to a sense to the kiddos that I had in class. But I looked at the HB situation and working in a school, and although I had a passion for child development, making sure that there was a stepping stone for children as they transition into early adulthood, and a love for sports and being able to communicate and almost coach these kids on and off of the wrestling mat, I felt there was a missing component to that. At that time, I didn't realize what it was, but I'm very grateful. My mother, if you ever met her, she is incredible woman. She has type A personality like I am. And she was hammering me, go back to school, whatever you do, get your degree, get your degree, get your degree. I'm like, forget about it, Mom. I'm done. I don't need college, whatever else. I'm more business minded. I just want to get into a career. And at that time, believe it or not, it was going back to Tyrant. I went back to Tyrant Wrestling and working with the kids and hearing about the stories with schools, and talking, for those listeners, he's probably too humble to say it, but Corey Frederick here had a huge impact and was actually the one that said, Rob, I look back at my childhood, and the one thing that I wish I did, and I can only recommend you to do, is at least get that bachelor's degree. So I've had the blessing of having great mentors and great coaches, but it was the combination of good old Joycey, my mother, and Coach Corey here that was like, get your butt back to school and at least get your bachelor's degree. And I'm so grateful for that, because if I hadn't done that, I don't think I wouldn't be where I'm at today. And most importantly, it allowed me to see that the void that I was missing in my job at HB DuPont Middle School was, I like the business side of school. Interestingly, I love the fact that you can create an institution as an incredible step and a resource in a community in child development to allow them to be resilient, become the best version of themselves. But I really didn't have a passion for the everyday showing up, teaching this curriculum. This is what you do, and clocking out. And I think that's just who I am.
Yeah.
How I'm wound together. So it was monumental. Went back, did the college thing. I think I complained every step of the way to the people that were, close to me. And then sure enough, my crazy butt went and just didn't stop going, and actually got a master's degree. And now I'm in a doctorate program. So it's long story short, it was incredible.
So, it's a crazy side note. I won't say his name, but, a wrestler from Delaware that's of similar age, he got injured. I think he took second one year, and he probably would have went on to be a multiple time state champ. And his only loss was, that year in the finals to a four-time state champ that went on to wrestle in college. But he was a national level wrestler, but he couldn't continue because of a knee injury. And he basically said to himself, after high school, is what's the hardest thing that I can do? What's the biggest challenge I can do? Right. So going back to like wrestling, or really, almost any sport, but how competitive, we are. What's the hardest thing I can do? So he said, I'm going to be a doctor. So he decided to go to med school and kind of pursue that. And I don't even know that he truly wanted to be a doctor, but he just thought that would be one of the biggest challenges he could put on himself. And, because he couldn't do anything physical anymore, at least not at that time. So couple plugs for you before we kind of move on is, I know, I went to St. Mark's High School as well. And while you have your degree and, certain things, behavioral science and then nonprofit management and all that, but, you also kind of had a love and a passion for social media. And, you along with Tom Fertile, who was the principal and then president of St. Mark's, who has recently or is about to move on as well. But you came into a school that just was not thriving at that time. And you guys blew it up, and you really increased that. I'm sure you can give us stats if you wanted to, but the fact of the matter is St. Mark's enrollment was declining for years. And you came in with your personality, your drive, your social media, that was self-taught. And you guys really increased, the enrollment at that school and made it, the so-called place to be in the state of Delaware, at least for private Catholic schools. What you've done since your time of coming out of college and being a part-time coach and to where you're at now is truly amazing. And, for the millions of listeners that are going to watch this or listen to this podcast, I want to commend you on all the success that you've had so far. So let's switch gears a little bit. So you took something that was such a negative in your life that took away so many things from you. And I don't know what year, you can talk about details, but you decided to start a foundation, the Muscle Movement Foundation, and really focusing on this disease that most people didn't know about. And as a matter of fact, nowadays I see commercials that talk about this, and it's not as popular as childhood cancer or all the other things that you see these commercials on that they want you to take medicine on, but we never even knew what this disease was, and now there's commercials. So why don't you talk a little bit about the Muscle Movement Foundation and what you've done since founding that organization?
Yeah, sure. So you said it before, with the excuse me, with the St. Mark's thing is when we came on, social media was self-taught. I remember I was doing a little bit of social media for Tyrant Wrestling. And it's all about, social media is an incredible asset. And it was really the segues into the Muscle Movement Foundation and being able to connect people and being able to storytell, being able to raise awareness for stuff. And we were able to do that a little bit early on in the early good old days with Tyrant Wrestling. And then when I assumed the role as director of admissions, was turned into vice president of enrollment management here at St. Mark's, I kind of always had, it wasn't official, but I was always in charge of the social media content, the digital management of the school, right? So your brand is always your promise. It's your institutional DNA. And I knew that we had such a kind of a negative community rapport with St. Mark's High School because of the common challenges that face Catholic schools across the country. If you, for those listeners that aren't familiar with the first state of Delaware, you can go north to south Delaware from your house up here, Corey, down to the beach in hour and a half, hour 45 top. So it's a small state, but
or if you're traveling on I-95,
right,
you can get from Maryland to Pennsylvania / New Jersey in a matter of about 10-15 minutes cutting through Delaware.
Right. So we, with that, there's a lot of charter schools that were popping up in the area. And then, you have the financial struggle, right? Tuition, if you're at a tuition-based school, tuition continues to climb, and there's bills that need to be paid, and then you're thinking about college and the like that you're budgeting for as a guardian, as a parent, and you're thinking, do I want to save this money for college or for a car or for other expenditures, or do I want to invest in my child's education? So, we utilize social media accordingly at St. Mark's. It was very successful, but interestingly, the same went for me being able to cope with my illness. So early on in 2012, I started a social media page that was solely meant to help out the Muscular Dystrophy Association, as well as the Myasthenia Gravis Foundation of America, two national organizations that combat myositis, a form of muscle disease, and the Muscular Dystrophy Association, which tackles all 50 plus different forms of muscle disease. So in short, like you mentioned, when you hear cancer, right, there might be kidney cancer or childhood cancer or breast cancer or the like. When you hear muscle disease, there's different types of muscle diseases. So I was a spokesperson for Philadelphia Muscular Dystrophy Association, as well as my illness, Myasthenia Gravis Foundation of America, and I enjoyed that very much. But I realized that there was no support group in Delaware that was really active. So my goal was to create a social media platform and a networking-based website, which I did successfully in 2012. And I just started connecting with fellow, what I refer to as MG muscle champions, right? So people that are living with MG or a different form of muscle disease, just to try to provide them some type of support to know what the heck was going on, what to do when you're first diagnosed, what to look forward to in terms of positivity with the prognosis, trying to streamline stuff that you might not know when you go on and you Google myasthenia gravis or muscular dystrophy or ALS, and you look at the horrible things that just pop up on Google. I would not recommend that for anybody trying to figure out what to do or your next steps or a prognosis. So we were able to successfully start a online networking site per se. And early on, I was able to master the social media component to that with a purpose of connecting people with muscle disease throughout the globe. Really cool. We were able to do that successfully, met some incredible folks. And that's when I think I went to you first and I asked, hey, I think I might want to do this legitimately and bring a steady resource system to the state of Delaware. And I had the opportunity to meet, I don't know if you remember this, Corey, but we met with incredible guy, Joe McDonough, who's running the Be Positive Foundation. And I think at that time I was definitely young. I was full with energy and was so, I think, gung ho on saying, we're gonna cure the world, which I was educated on the business aspect of running a successful nonprofit, and Joe was very, very helpful to being encouraging for me taking the first steps and just getting a 501c3 status. And a lot of that was because we had lunch that one day. So it came about. We started as the Muscle Movement Organization in 2012, and then we got our IRS registered 501c3 status, changed it to the Muscle Movement Foundation, and we've held a successful 5K in the state of Delaware, which is the largest 5K that directly provides accommodations to families that are affected by neuromuscular disease. So it's been incredible. But I learned a little bit early on about the struggles and the burnout that can occur when you want to run a nonprofit. I'm sure like in our wrestling community, there's always a great cause that's attached to our sport across the country, be it Pink Cancer or the B Plus Foundation or maybe the Leukemia Society or whatever it might be, mental health. I know Mr. Locke, Chris Locke came out right for SL24, but not a lot of people understand the business side of actually running the nonprofit and running it successfully for more than 2 to 3 years before burnout occurs. So it's been great. It's been
Yeah,
great.
I had lunch. Well, I had lunch with both those guys recently, and then they both have been on the podcast here prior to you. But I forget the stat that they threw out, but the percentage of people that start a nonprofit that actually sustain it is very low.
Right.
But the other thing is it just seems like every time somebody suffers tragedy, whether it's a death, or somebody has cancer, or like you said, you have your disease, like it seems like everybody wants to start a nonprofit right away, when really sometimes the best thing you could do is probably to support an existing one that's thriving as opposed to doing it yourself, because it's a lot of work and you find it yourself you doing most of the work. I mean, you did everything from A to Z, you setting it up. You had no idea what you were doing, but you found a way. I mean, that's a testament to you. But what happens if you're not around, right? What happens if you can't find other volunteers? And fact of the matter is, a lot of times, unless you find people that have gone through what you've gone through, they're not as passionate about you, and they might not, they start off helping you, but they're not going to be around too long. So, but everything you've done thus far has been great. Matter of fact, you talked about your 5K. I know I've seen pictures. I don't know that I've been to one or two, but I've never participated, I don't believe. But I've seen pictures and I've heard stories, but you have people that have the disease that are in wheelchairs that other people, I believe, are pushing, whether they're walking or running, to give them an opportunity to be able to do something like that. You want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I wanted to have the idea, like it goes back to my personal story, right? So I was able to do what I was able to do and accomplish the achievements I had early on because of the support of a team, being, like I said, my direct family, indirect family, coaches, community, et cetera. So I wanted to make sure that we're bringing the power of team to the forefront of our families' lives. So when I thought of 5Ks, common, fundraiser, an event that a lot of nonprofits get involved in. I did look into golf outings as well. The 5K, in full transparency, seemed to be the event with the less overhead. So it made more sense, obviously, to raising more contributions that would directly be redirected to our families that needed it the most. So we partnered with actually a St. Mark's guy, just like us, Corey. Steve Cinco, graduate of St. Mark's High School, has an organization called Move to Include, and they have what's called adaptive running chairs. And Steve, he's a guru. He runs these 5Ks, probably marathons all across the country, and pushes individuals that have limited, ability or mobility, whatever it may be, that they may not be able to complete the course without the support of a team. So in partnering with him, it's been incredible. It's an inclusive 5K walk or run, and our muscle champions, which we refer to at the Muscle Movement Foundation as local individuals who are living and refusing to lose to neuromuscular diseases. Some of them are, thank God, able to walk and complete the 3.14 mile course. Some people are able to run, but others that have a specific form of muscle disease, maybe such as Duchenne muscular dystrophy, which is interestingly very prevalent in boys, and typically will unfortunately rob their ability to walk statistically by the age of anywhere from 12 to 15, depending on how quick that disease progresses, is they're wheelchair bound the rest of their life, So we will pair them up with whether it be athletes or a school team or an organization like Tyrant, or just a local individual who wants to support the event and push them. And you actually have a supporter pushing that muscle champion and other individuals as well in the community in adaptive running chairs so they can cross the finish line together and complete the 3.14 miles.
Yeah, I've seen some smiles in our faces. Yeah, anything, I mean, like, what's your experience been, or what advice do you have for people though that think they want to start a nonprofit?
So I would say do your research first. I think to your point, there can always be, and this can go in any business in any industry and can relate to any hardship. While there may be great intent, you can actually do more damage. I I learned that the hard way, which I wouldn't change at all, but being a little bit more strategic about it, I think that throughout my early on, and I probably had my age on my side and being young, but I definitely probably put my personal health behind me starting the Muscle Movement Foundation and some of the hours that I've put in. And it can be, detrimental to yourself. But the greatest advice that I can give is that make sure that you take care of your health first and yourself first and your family, because without you and your health and your family, then particularly the organization might not be sustainable, right? So I do think a great idea is to get involved, become an advocate in some of these local nonprofits that are in existence to date, be it a regional chapter or a local chapter, or even a national chapter. I think the COVID-19 pandemic obviously shined light on the ability for businesses to do business and not have brick and mortar per se. So everything's virtual, the podcast, social media, online sessions that you can do. I mean, we can pick up this good old thing that has definitely changed in my lifetime. And I know you're a little bit older than me, so it definitely has changed during your lifetime. But, simply your cell phone, you can FaceTime on it, you can do whatever. So you can connect with folks all across the globe at the click of a button, which is incredible. And I don't think I've ever told you this, Corey, but I was actually talking with some of my family members recently about this transition from St. Mark's to Holy Cross Prep and the Muscle Movement Foundation. And I think back, and we've had one heck of a journey with it all. But the Muscle Movement Foundation early on, I was so concentrated on making it work because indirectly it was a coping mechanism for me. Because when I was going through it, I needed that support. I wanted to tell people, hey guys, like I was going to be a great athlete one day. I was going to be a great scholar one day. I had aspirations in being going into the medical field or going into psychology. Hey, listen to what happened to me. And it turned into I did not want any other boy or girl or husband or wife to embark on this journey alone, and that for them to feel what I felt with misdiagnoses or not having a support system or potentially going to maybe to a national chapter event. And then that's kind of all it was one event per year. So it was a hard lesson to learn and probably that was detrimental for my health. But in the end, I was just so concentrated on making sure that number one, these people had a resource system and I was going to be there every step of the way. And it wasn't me just being a fundraiser or somebody that started nonprofits. Like, guys, I understand what you're living and my family does as well. So I would give the suggestions, take care of yourself. Never let a situation determine the way you feel, but you can determine the way you feel about a situation. And you definitely need the proper resources and being able to successfully overcome the adversity.
So, okay, we talked a little bit about starting a nonprofit or, but so the people, and maybe you just touched on it a little bit, but anyone that's been affected by this disease, what can you tell them so they don't give up on themselves? Or what can you tell them so they can try to stay positive or maybe get the medical attention or help that they need?
Find grace in the disruptions and never stop being an advocate for yourself. You know your body, you know what feels right, you know what feels wrong. And in the wild world of autoimmune diseases, as well as some of these chronic illnesses, something might work for someone and not work for you, right? So, be vocal, and you have to look at it as a team. Early on, and I learned this through my own advocacy, I was very bitter early on with the physicians and doctors that I may have seen early on that misdiagnosed me and continued to have this preset notion that it was psychosomatic, even actually, unfortunately, after a diagnosis. But that really, I was able to channel that, understand it, and utilize that as a viewpoint, just like a wrestler on the mat and a coach in their corner, that these doctors and physicians should be in your corner. And unfortunately, yes, you'll meet doctors that you don't see eye to eye with, right? Just like you might see some coaches that you prefer not to be in your corner, while you see other coaches that you really enjoy being in your corner. But overall, the sport of wrestling, just like I look at the healthcare industry, you have to have multidisciplinary teams that you as a patient have to work side by side into getting to that overall outcome. And obviously that you're talking about in a patient standpoint, their quality of life might not be a cure, might be a cure, but overall you want to live a very long life and you want to have quality of life in that. So I was able to look at that as I am in a partnership with the doctors, good, bad, or indifferent. I'm in a partnership with other patients that are living with the disease, negative or positive, and being able to try to be in it as a team, and I think that stems back from my childhood and being able to work together on a team and work collectively to achieve a common goal.
I mean, you're a multiple sport athlete, 4 different sports at least. Do you think wrestling benefited you more long-term than any other sport?
Yes, without a doubt. I know that for a fact. Um, when I talk about my survivor story, as every patient does, or any caregiver, for example, like a Chris Locke, God bless the Locke family, or like the McDonough family, right? It opens up these wounds that are so vivid. And I think back personally to laying on my back in the hospital bed, not being able to breathe, walk, talk, couldn't stand on my own to use the urinal right by the side of the bed, like really, really detrimental, difficult times to go through. And, looking over and seeing my mother and seeing you and my family members and coaches and friends come and visit me in the hospital and being on your deathbed, right? And I think about those things, but when I think about me and my specific illness and struggling to breathe and struggling to talk and struggling to walk and swallow food, I have, without a doubt, an ability to channel myself into some of those deep and darkest times in training in the sport of wrestling, one-on-one, whether it was losing weight for nationals, whether it was wrestling up 15, 20 pounds as a freshman on varsity at St. Mark's and being a 13-year-old boy with peach fuzz on his chin and wrestling grown men, right? And still being able to compete and hold my own. These are the things that I was able to channel and redirect that to. And that the goal of it might have been just being able to breathe that day, or being able to literally eat a pureed meal and swallow and channel that energy in swallowing just to be able to survive. And in some more severe situations, just channeling to be able just to suck in the oxygen that's going, being pumped in your body. So you can, and I'm sure a lot of wrestlers across the globe can attest to this. Even if you're playing another sport, you will come out of football season, be it football or soccer, and you get on that wrestling mat and you are not in shape yet. So the ability to push yourself past your comfort zone. People that don't wrestle may not understand, but when you get out on the mat, there's a different type of being in shape when you're in the middle of wrestling season, or more importantly, when you're heading into that conference tournament or state tournament or Fargo or the like, that you're in just a different, you're in a different element. You're a different specimen on and off the mat. And I'll utilize that, Corey. I utilize that in my deepest, darkest times. And I still do to this day, retired now, I'm getting over up in the mid 30 range. I'm seeing my love handles pop in and I'm like, what's going on? And I always revert back though, that you have to adjust and adapt as you get older, as you have a family, as you have more work, more of a workload or more of a school load. And that's okay. I would say go roll with the punches and always stay active and do what you can do, but also be mindful of rest time and not overdoing it as well. And that has been a big shift in my life that I think early on as a young man, that was more difficult for me to do, that I've actually been able to successfully acknowledge and embrace now that I'm getting a little bit older and learning how to live in balance with this illness, along with everything else in life, relationships, family time, social environments, taking a new job, of course. So it's been a journey, and that's what the beauty of life is. So find grace in those disruptions.
What are you, 31 years old?
I'll be actually 33 in August this
All right,
year.
so you're 32 years old. From my perspective, I feel like that's extremely young, at least in age, to be a president of a school. Most people wouldn't even apply for that position. What are some goals you have for yourself personally or for the school that you're entering into? But what do you see ahead? What's your vision?
First and foremost, I would have never thought 10 years ago, 15 years ago, let alone 5 years ago, that I would walk into a job as director of admissions at my alma mater, at our alma mater, right? Secondly, I would never think that I would ever be working in a school after I left HB DuPont Middle School early on, and I think I was 19, 20 years old. And I would never think I would be a president of a school. This path at returning to my alma mater has not only been healing to me personally for the situations that I missed out on in high school, which a lot of folks don't truly understand. I've never went public with that information, but I was able to, over the course of this past 5 years, this tenure spent as admissions director or vice president of enrollment management at St. Mark's High School, I have been able to pour my heart and soul into this community that has saved me and supported me during my weakest times. And I only wanted that and continue to want that for the local children that are growing up in our local community. I've been blessed to have one of the most dynamic Catholic school leaders in the nation in Tom Fertile, who has mentored me side by side, 24/7, day in and day out, and I've been very fortunate, has brought me in since day one on the financial side of things, on the principalship side of things for the organizational management of the school, from academia to spiritual life, faith formation, to community involvement with We just implanted a low ropes leadership course on St. Mark's campus where we're going to have military organizations come out and local organizations and middle schools where, as we talked about earlier in life, be it by chance or by choice, you're going to be called upon to lead. So we want to ensure that there is a opportunity here at St. Mark's High School for the kids to be leaders or for other community members to be leaders. So just branching out and having that mentorship from Tom Fertile on a daily basis. And he and I have a great relationship as you and I have, or any of my other coaches in life, that jump on the phone 11:30 at night, jump on the phone 5 o'clock in the morning, whatever it may be, consistently talking about getting to that next level. And over this 5-year tenure, he's most definitely counseled me, mentored me, have brought me into those higher level executive decisions and strategic planning and feasibility study and the like. And I felt confident that was the next step for me. I didn't know it was going to be at Holy Cross Prep. We had the opportunity to speak on the 65% enrollment increase that we were able to accomplish during our tenure here at St. Mark's at a national conference up in Boston, Massachusetts, with an incredible organization called Partners in Mission. So I look at this for the viewers here as the Tyrant Wrestling is like the national consultation business for Catholic schools across the country. So while you guys are running national tournaments across the country, top notch, no one can touch how you guys run a tournament. No one can touch the way that these guys are counseling Catholic school leaders across the country. So we went up there, we did a talk. I think our topic was the intangibles, how vision, mission, and culture has really driven that enrollment increase. And while a lot of those conferences up there in Boston touched on methodology, Tom and I went kind of a wild card route in talking about some of the stuff, that you saw here in Delaware with guerrilla marketing and the billboards and firing up our alumni saying, hey, we're not dead. We are doing some incredible things here. And that really led into the single largest campaign in school history. So getting all of that mentorship from Tom, living it, and I think having a passion for St. Mark's, and then complementing that with, of course, my education and my background in the nonprofit sector, which a school is a nonprofit organization. It all came into fruition. Tom Fertile, we keep him in our prayers. He had an incredible opportunity to bring Catholic education to an untapped market here in the state of Delaware down south. So at that time, he had moved on, and he was hired. Actually, Partners in Mission was the consultation, or I should say, the search committee, the search organization that this new school was utilizing. And they called him up and said, "What's your buddy Rob doing?" At that time, and there was an opening at Holy Cross Preparatory Academy in Delran, New Jersey. And I looked at the school, and what resonated with me, Corey, and for our viewers, the school has an incredible background that is very, very similar to the story of St. Mark's. 1,600 kids back in the day, went through some hurdles here and there, and the common challenges that face our Catholic schools. And they actually, by the grace of their board of trustees and their alumni, they went private in 2018. So they've had some success since 2018 to current day, and they're looking just for that next leader. And I threw my hat in the ring there. Incredible community, great interview process, and I just knew it was the right calling for me to take that next step and help out a community, just as we did here at St. Mark's. So I'm really, really looking forward to it.
Anything else you want to share with all our listeners? Anything else you want people to know about Rob DeMasi?
Nah, most importantly, I just want to encourage our viewers to continue to follow the Tyrant Network, be it the Tyrant Sportswear, the sports sales, be it Tyrant Wrestling tournaments. I mean, a lot of folks may know you, Corey, and the Tyrant brand in different arenas, but for all of our viewers, I'm very blessed to have Corey Frederick, and like I said, he's too humble to admit, but Corey Frederick in my corner since day one. And that has been a prime example. Coaches out there, for all them coaches out there that are coaching these young guys and these young gals up, these are relationships that will forever carry you in life. And just a good old Delawarean boy like me who got in the sport of wrestling earlier, who Corey and I still have an incredible relationship to this day, and seeing the things he's been able to accomplish in providing the #1 platform for wrestling and just leadership and the like has been incredible. And I'm just blessed to be a part of it. So I appreciate you having me on the show, Corey.
Yeah, thanks for all the kind words. I mean, honestly, as much as I talk and I do things, I hate to hear, things like that about myself in public, because it's not about me, it's about everybody else. But to your point, and this is a former teammate of yours, and just talking about coaching and all the things that we've done. But Bobby Telford, Iowa coach, called me this morning. Actually, he FaceTimed me. He was cooking breakfast, and he had his infant daughter next to him while everybody else was still sleeping. I had just come back from the gym. We both had our shirts off, and we were FaceTiming, and it was funny. But we probably talked for a half an hour. I barely got to my office on time. And then he's away on vacation right now, taking a hot minute, a few days. They're on vacation with another family. And the other friend, the mother of another child, walked out, and I said, "Man, she probably thinks we're weird. We're both have our shirts off. We're FaceTiming. We're talking, and we're hanging out together." But anyway, he was talking to me. I'd laugh about that, but he was talking to me about some of the relationships that he's built and the guys that he's coached and all the things that he goes through. And you never really realize the impact that you have on people's life unless somebody shares it with you. And you as an educator, you as a coach. I was a coach for a long time. And that's, when I was in corporate America, working at MBNA America, and then it got bought by Bank of America. But, I was already coaching for 20 years or 15 years or so. But I had said to myself, I'm just not making a difference in this world. Like, yeah, I'm making a living and I'm supporting my family and I'm doing all those things, but I want to coach full time. And back then, like, there was really not many travel teams, or it wasn't popular, especially in Delaware. You couldn't make a career out of coaching, especially wrestling of all things. But it's something that I love to do. And now I kind of turned that and just poured that, our heart and soul into tournaments nowadays. But we have multiple things going on. But yeah, I appreciate everything, our relationship. And, I really respect the hell out of you. And whether it's you or Telford or all the people that 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 are your friends or teammates or whatever over the years. But it's funny to see go from, a coach athlete to then, as they get a little bit older, to become a friend or a mentor mentee, or, like really you guys are like family, right? But these relationships continue to grow. Actually, as a coach, and I said it to Bobby this morning, that's one of the biggest things that I'm going to miss about coaching is just, developing the relationships on and off the mat with our athletes, watching them grow and mature over the years. And especially the athletes that had fathers that were police officers or mothers that were police officers that could get me out of a speeding ticket. I don't have that luxury anymore now that I don't coach, but yeah, so, it's been quite a journey, and, I'm 46, and really I might only be halfway through my life, hopefully. So there's still a lot ahead of us. But Robbie, honestly, and I know you kind of complimented me, but I've said it already a couple of times throughout this. And I said, a matter of fact, as I was preparing for this podcast, I was going to give that as a disclosure in the beginning to say, I might say Robbie multiple times because that's how I know you. But, everything that you have accomplished, everything that you have done, is nothing short of amazing. And, physically, mentally, your education, now your career. And I can't wait to watch you. And I can't wait, I'm a Rob DeMasi fan. So now I am technically a Holy Cross Prep fan. And I can't wait to watch, where that school goes. I don't know where they're at right now. So I don't know what you have ahead of you, but I can't wait to watch that school and follow it. No different than what you've done at St. Mark's and all their sports programs. That's what I care about most, not as much about academics, but I'm sure they'll be in good hands. So I will like, share, and follow all the platforms that are on social media for Holy Cross, as well as I'm already on there for Rob DeMasi. So thanks so much. I know it's Friday afternoon, and you're in the education system. You could be at the beach, you could be doing other things, but I know you're working on St. Mark's things, and then you're getting ready for Holy Cross. So thanks again, Rob. Best of luck to you, brother. Talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Corey. Take care.